Okay, picking up where we left off on page 532, we're talking about the scenario manager. Before I can make this thing work, I actually have to finish this guy out. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish. So this would be the sum of my retail sales and my that's my gross revenue. Here's my fixed costs. And so that would be the sum of all of this. My commission is my only variable cost. And the commission would only be on the golf lessons, not on retail. Ah, what the heck? Let's do both. Who cares, right? So that would be this times that. And then my total expenses would be the sum of, what is that? D13 plus D15. That's my total expenses. And so therefore my net income would be how much money I made minus how much money it took me to make that. So in this particular case, I'm going to make $200,000. Woohoo! All right. Now the problem is this may be like my projection for the amount of sales in golf. And so I'm my crystal ball might be out of order this week. So I don't want to just take my opinion. I want to go to some of my other folks in my company and say, what do you guys think? And so one way to do that is to go through this thing called the scenario manager, where you can create multiple scenarios and then analyze them. So I'm going to go to what if analysis again, the scenario manager. So the first thing it's going to ask me is, hey, what scenario do you want? Well, I don't have one yet. So this is an add button. That makes sense. So add. And so you're supposed to give this a name like optimistic. In this case, it's going to be employees. This is going to be Bob's estimate. Okay. And then, what cells am I going to change? Okay. Well, the changing cells here are these two guys right here. That's the only thing that's going to change. Okay. And then I'm going to, so now I've set up my scenario for Bob. And then it's going to say, what does Bob think? Okay, so Bob thinks that we're only going to do, I don't know, 4,500 in retail and, I don't know, 180 in lessons. Okay, doink. So that's Bob's estimate. Now, one of the things you can do is just hit the show button. I'm going to hit the show button. It looks like it went from 205,000 to 184. Cool. So I'm going to do another one. So we're going to do, this is, I don't know, Sally. And same thing, right? And what does Sally think? Well, Sally is very optimistic. She thinks you're going to have 5,500 and, I don't know, 250,000. Okay, let's do another one. And let's do Fred. And Fred's a real curmudgeon, and he didn't believe we're doing anything. So he thinks we're gonna, have no more than about 40. Let's do 35,000. But he thinks that the lessons and fees are fantastic, so he's gonna make this one, 28. Okay, so I've got 3 scenarios, and I could just go through and pick one and say show. Okay, 260. Go to the next one and hit show. Go to the next one and hit show. That's pretty cool. That's a way of taking several people's best estimates and working with a spreadsheet. Okay, the cool part about this is when it comes time to doing a summary. Because although this is pretty cool, being able to show what the original values were and all these guys, that is one way of doing it. Hitting the summary allows me to get a report and be able to compare them all. So I'm going to hit summary, and there's one of the ways you can do this is what's called a scenario summary. That makes sense, right? And where do you want to put this? And whammo. So here's the current values. Here's what Bob's estimates were. Here's what Sally's estimate. Here's Fred. So you can just see them all, and that's pretty cool. I want to go back and go back to here and do my what if analysis scenario manager. And this time I'm going to go in and do a summary, and I'm going to do a pivot table. Ooh. The pivot table basically does exactly what you think. It does Bob, Fred, and Sally, and it shows what their numbers are. Kind of cool. So this is actually a pretty cool thing if you're into you know, trying to figure out what's going on. You know, you don't really know what the answers are. And so let me get back to where I was. There we go. So you're just kind of guessing, and so you gather other people's opinion. Now, it should be fairly obvious, I hope, that if you only had one scenario, right? You only had one scenario, well, then you just plug the numbers in. You don't actually need a scenario manager, because this one, I think this one is Bob's. I don't remember. Let's assume it is. This is Bob's. Well, if that was the only scenario you had, you don't need a scenario manager if you only got one. There it is. You're looking at it. What's the big deal, right? Okay. So that's how that thing works. I do like the scenario summary report. This guy. And can you look at this and tell me this is a consolidation? I bet you can, can't you? That I can expand these guys this way, and I can expand, you know, it's just how, you know, the consolidation feature we talked about some previous chapter, how it goes in and creates these groups. And so you can tell by this the thing here, this is actually a consolidation. Pivot table is just a pivot table, and no big deal. Nothing fancy there. Moving along. Okay, the next one, the last one in the list, is a thing called the solver. Now the problem is that if I go to the data tab, I should have a thing here called solver, and I don't have it. And the reason is because I haven't put this in my system. By the way, I'm gonna go ahead and delete some of this summary guy just to get back to what the system had. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna have to go to options to be able to turn on this feature. It's called an add-in. Turn on an add-in called the solver. So I go to file, I go to options. One of the things in the list is called add-ins. Very good. And it's going to show me the add-ins that are currently there. Now, this does not mean that they're turned on. It just means they're installed. So here's the solver add-in, and it is installed in my system. I didn't have to go do anything. It's there, except it isn't turned on. So there's a thing here that talks about manage. What would you like to manage? Well, I'd like to manage the add-ins. And so I hit the button. And this lists me all the ones that are actually there but are not turned on. And I want the solver. So I just click that, hit OK. Doing. And now I have this extra little doodad over here. Woohoo! Okay. So the solver is all about complex things. You know, I have multiple variables, and there's like 5 different ways you can come up with the same answer. So it's going to try to figure out the most optimum solution. So let's say I have the capability of producing between 100 and 200 widgets, and I can charge between $100 and $200. So what mix of that is going to be the best for me? Okay, so there's probably going to be one answer which is going to be better than the others, and so I want to find out. So this is actually some pretty doggone tough math going on behind the scenes. This is not a math class, so we're not going to do that, but just bear with me. So I go here to golf lessons. Okay. So there are some rules you have to make the, you know, you have to give it kind of limits. So I'm going to be changing the number of clients and number of instructors to find out what is the maximum, what is the most optimum number of clients and instructors to make my net income the best. My goal is to obtain the highest. Now, remember goal seek? Remember that? Your goal seek where you punch in a number and it said it went brrr, ran through them, but that was only for one variable, okay? And so goal seek works very well for one variable. It does not work with a flip for 2 variables, so you have to use a solver. So solver is essentially the goal seek on steroids, okay? That's essentially it. Okay. So I'm going to hit the little solver guy, doing, and then it says, what is my objective? So the objective is going to be that, okay? The objective is my net income. And then what am I trying to do? Am I trying to make it the maximum? Do I want to have it a minimum? Do I want a particular value? For example, I want to make I want to make $2,000. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go here and say I want to make $2,000. And once again, for reasons that are not immediately clear, this is not a cell reference here. Okay, by changing which variables? Okay, well, by changing these two variables. Cool. Now, so now it knows that I'm trying to get to an objective, and my objective is I want to make $2,000 profit. By changing these, now you have to go in and teach it a little bit about what the acceptable values are. So for an example in the book, they talk about there can't be any more than 4 instructors on the course at any one time. So I'm going to add a constraint, and so the constraint is going to be instructors. That's this guy. Has to be less than or equal to 4, because that's the maximum number of instructors that I could put into the course. On the clients, it's going to be a little different. Let me go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and hit the OK button just to show you that daggone it. I actually have a constraint. Now I could have just kept on typing, but I just wanted to show you how it showed up. So here, now I want the client. The client has to be greater than or equal to 4. So it has to be between 4 and 7. So I hit add, and then not doing anything more. I'm just going to go ahead and click here and do, yeah, less than or equal to, I don't know, what did I say, 14? Okay. And I'm going to hit add and hit cancel. Okay, so what I have now here is the D4 goes between 4 and 14, and the D5 cell can only be less than. Okay, and that's it. Now, basically, you go in and tell it this stuff, and you say, solve this for me. Doing! And then it says, okay, I've solved it. And the answer is, you have to have 5 clients. Well, actually, 5.4. This is actually a pretty good thing. I can't have a 0.4 client. So I'm going to go back and return to the solver dialog guy. And I need to add one. And this is a little weird. I have to tell it that this cell reference here, well, both of them, are integers. Okay? Come on. There. That's an integer. And because I can't have half of an instructor or half of a... now let's go back and... oh, dang it. Let's go back and look. So now I told it that both the number of clients and number of instructors have to be integers. Now let's hit solve. Ding! Okay. Huh. I guess I can't have it exactly at 2,000, huh? Okay. Whatever. The point is that it ran through a couple of, even though my example didn't work right, it ran through a couple of iterations to come up with the correct answer. I probably should have given it a range of values that I wanted here rather than precisely 2,000, because you can't get precisely 2,000. You can get close, but hey, and I'm not going to go back and fix it. But the bottom line is, so the solver is, and you can have a lot of variables. You could have, 3 or 4 variables, and you go in, you set constraints. This has to be a whole number. This has to have this. This has to be between this number and that number. And this can be da 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 da. It gets a little complex, and then you hit the button, and presso changeo, it answers your question for you. Yay! Hey, I'm going to go back to here, and instead of making this value of, I'm just going to tell it maximize. What do you think? Okay. And so maximize means, yeah, 14 and 4. Well, that's fairly obvious. The maximum number of clients and the maximum number of instructors gives me the maximum number of net income. Gee, what a surprise. Okay. So, again, solver is a pretty doggone cool. It's the same thing as the other what-if analysis. It just allows you to do 2. Okay, we're going to do some reports, and then we will be done. So, stay tuned.